Good everyone, my name is Dan and welcome to Gordon School of Mathematics. In our previous classes, I said we have two types of bearing. Number one, compass bearing, and number two, true bearing. We looked at compass bearing extensively in our previous classes, where I said compass bearing is a measurement of a point using compass points. That is, and I said the compass points are the cardinal points, which are when measuring from, we have the north, we have the east, we have the south, and then we have the west. And then I said between the north and the east, we have the northeast. Between the south and the east, we have the southeast. And it is southeast because measurements is taken from the south towards the east. And then we have the southwest, where measurement is taken from the south towards the west. We have the northwest, where measurement is taken from the north towards the west. Now, today we are looking at the second type of bearing, which is true bearing. Now, true bearing is the measurement of a point from another point. From another point. You see, this word from, like I said in our previous class, is very, very key and very, very important because it indicates the starting point of your measurement. So if I have the measurement of a point A from the point B, now even though A precedes B, the starting point is B because it told us that it is from B, not from A. So it means that B will be the starting point going towards, say, A, for example. So the from indicates the starting point of your measurement. The difference between compass bearing and true bearing is that compass bearing measures one point. Right? It measures a point using the cardinal point. For example, if I say, what is the measurement of A? What is the bearing of A? 83 degrees, for example. Now, I will have my north, my south, the east, and the west. Now, measuring from the origin, for example, of course, when you start measuring, measure from the origin, and I said that the north is the origin, right, which is 0. So starting from the origin, 83 degrees around this point. So this is our point A, which indicates that A, which is 83 degrees, is between north and east. And if you are going to write it, you write the north 83 degrees towards the east. However, true bearing measures a point from another point. It measures a point from another point. The from indicates the point where the measurement is to be made. Now, a few things to note while measuring or while constructing using true bearing. Number one is that measurements are done from the north only. A measurement is done from the north only. Now, unlike compass bearing, where the measurement can be done from the north towards the east or towards the west, as well as the south towards the east or towards the west. For true bearing, measurement is only done only from the north. Number two is that you measure clockwise only. You measure clockwise only. That is, if I have to the north, I can only measure going this way to this way. Unlike compass bearing, if you have a point between the north and the west, Now, if you go from the west towards the north, that would be clockwise, right? However, in compass bearing, you don't measure from the west to the north. You can only measure from the north to the west. And if you are measuring from the north to the west, that is what? Anti-clockwise. You're going this way. Same thing if you have a point between the south and the east. Now, to go clockwise will be you measuring from the east going towards the south. However, you don't measure from the east to the south in compass bearing. You only measure from the south towards the east. And if you are measuring from the south towards the east, that is anti-clockwise. So that means compass bearing can measure clockwise as well as anti-clockwise. But for true bearing, you only measure clockwise, that is from the left to the right alone. And then number 3 is that you use 3-figure digits. I remember I said that true bearing is also called 3-figure digits. Now, for example, if I have a bearing of 23 degrees, for example, you don't write 23 degrees, you write 023 degrees, which is 023. It has to be in 3 digits so that the reason is because so that we can get a perfect reading, right? The highest degree in a bearing, if you move from the north back to the north, is 360 degrees, which is 3 digits. So even if I'm going to write a single digit bearing, for example, say 8 degrees, it must be represented in a 3 digit bearing, which is 008 degrees. So while representing your true bearing, you use 3-figure digits, unlike compass bearing, where you can have the north 83 degrees to the east, right? You can have 2 bearings written in between 2 or more letters. Now, number 4 is that the bearing of A, the bearing of A from B is not the same as the bearing of B, from A. What do I mean? Now, like I said, from indicates the starting point. Now, the bearing of A from B indicates that the bearing or the measurement starts from the point B. So if this is my point B, for example, always having the north pole because your measurement starts from the point. If I'm going to measure or draw the bearing of A has to start from B. So if the bearing of A from B is 82 degrees, for example, it means I'm going to measure the bearing of A from point B, which means I take my 82 degree from point B, which gives me 82 will be between these points, that is between north and east, which goes this way. So this is where my point A will then be, because the measurement have to start from point B, which measures towards point A. So this is my 82 degrees. So although it is the bearing of A, which is 82 degrees, but because the measurement was taken from B, the measurement will be taken, or the bearing will be taken at point B, which is not the same as the bearing of A from B. Now, this from now indicates that this bearing is taken from point A, which means my starting point will be point A. So if the bearing of B from A, for example, is 278, for example, That means that my bearing from A now, this is point A, and of course, this is the North Pole. Remember, every measurement can only start from point and it has to be clockwise. So by the time I move to this point, I got to 90, move to this point, I got to 180, move to this point, I got to 270. So my 278 will be between this point, right? So this is the point of my 278 degree, which means angle A will move towards this point. And then this is where my point B will then be, which also has its own North Pole. So you see, point B is moving forward towards A, while point A is moving backward towards B. And if you look at the arrow from A rather to B, that is having a starting point at B, you see that it was moving from the north forward. So when your bearing is moving forward, it is called fore bearing. That is, it is moving forward. But unlike the bearing from A, the bearing of B now from A, if you look at it, it is going backward. It's going back to the origin, right? So when it's going back, it's called back bearing or reverse bearing. All right, so I have an example that says the bearing of A from B is 83 degrees. Of course, it is written 083 because it is a true bearing. So one of the ways you know that you are working on a true bearing is that number one, it has this from. Number two, alternatively, the degrees is given in 3 digits. Now we have the bearing of A from B is 83 degrees. Question A says illustrate this on bearing, and question B, find the bearing of B from A. So first, A, we know that it is the bearing of A, but from B. So B is the starting point. So if this is our starting point, which is B, remember, every true bearing has the North Pole, which starts from the north. So you measure 83 degrees, right? Which will be somewhere around there before we get to 90 degrees. Now, so which means our A will go towards this direction. So this becomes our point A. Every bearing has its own north degrees. So this is 83 degrees, right? And this is the illustration on bearing. Now, option B now says find the bearing of B from A. Now, this same, we already know that A is 83 degrees from B. Now, to find the bearing of B from A, this is the line that joins A and B. So if it is the bearing of B from A, it means our measurements will be drawn at A, not B, because it is from A. So starting from the north, clockwise, we draw until we hit the line that joins A and B, right? So you see, this is our bearing of B from A. How then do we find the exact bearing of B from A? Now note, the North Pole of two points are parallel to each other. So it means these two lines are parallel, right? Even if extended, both of them are parallel. They will continue moving either upward or downward without touching each other. And if I have two parallel lines, and I have a transversal line that cuts the two lines, the two parallel lines, then this angle and this angle, right, are alternate angles. And alternate angles are what? Are equal. So we have this, if this angle is 83 degrees, this angle too will be 83 degrees. Now, you will note something. I wrote 83 degrees. That is because I am the one introducing it. It is not in the question. The first 83 degrees has to be 3 figure. Since I'm the one introducing it in the drawing, it's not compulsory I write 083. Now, so if this angle from this point to this point is 83 degrees, remember this point to this point is 180 degrees, right? Angle on a straight line is 180 degrees. This point to this point is 83 degrees. Then we can find from this point to this point, and then our angle B, right, from A will then equal 180 degrees plus 83 degrees, and that gives us 263 degrees. Now, another way in which you can find your angle, the bearing of B from A is, now since both of them are parallel lines, right? Now, two angles on the same line are supplementaries. So which means this angle and these angles are supplementary. That means the sum of this angle, 83 degrees, plus this angle that we don't know yet is also, let's say x now, will equal 180 degrees. Which means this angle will equal 180 degrees minus 83 degrees. And that should give us 97 degrees, right? So which means this angle is 97 degrees. Now, if from this point to this point is 97 degrees, and from this point down to this point is 360 degrees, right? That's full points. Now, we can now get from this point to this point by subtracting this, which is 97 degrees, from 360 degrees. So that will give us that our B from A will equal 360 degrees minus 97 degrees, and that will give us 263 degrees. Whichever way you decide to go about it, either by adding 180 or by subtracting from 360, you will get your bearing of B from A. So if you look at it, B from A is a reversed bearing, while A from B is a 4 bearing. In our next class, we'll solve more questions on true bearing. If you are new on this page, please do well to subscribe. You can also like, share, comment, and follow us across our social media pages at Gordon School of Mathematics. Till I come your way next time, bye for now.